Kirtan ki jai, Vande Hari 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 Ram, Hare Krishna Mahamantra ki jai. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So, the subject that I decided to speak on was something I did about a month ago, a little bit more actually, in Slovenia. They asked me to speak on preaching. And so, after exploring the topic a little bit, not very much, but somewhat, I found it's a really interesting way that is presented in different ways throughout the scriptures. It's practically one of the most profuse topics that Srila Prabhupada wrote about and spoke on. In fact, today I was listening to one lecture, 1968, from Montreal. I just happened to turn on Prabhupada, and it was a series of lectures on Montreal. And Prabhupada's talking about Prahlad Maharaj and the importance of giving Krishna consciousness to others. So it was quite, interesting that I just happened to turn on that lecture today. So this is a verse. I chose one verse from the Srimad Bhagavatam, and this is from the 3rd canto, 21st chapter. This is verse number 31. So let's hope my Kindle doesn't die here, because it's giving me signs of low battery here. Anyway. So this, I'll read it in Sanskrit and then we can do the translation. Kritva dayam cha jivesu, datva cha vayam atmavan, maya atmanam saha jagat, draksayatmani chapyamam. This is spoken by the Supreme Personality of Godhead himself. This is Lord Kapiladev, and he's speaking to his mother. And the translation is, showing compassion to all living entities, you will attain self-realization. Giving assurance of safety to all, you will perceive your own self as well as all the universes in me and myself in you. It's quite a long purport, and Prabhupada doesn't really get to the subject matter of the verse until a little bit later in the purport. But he gives a general overview, and I'll read anyway, just for the sake of going through the purport, because it's all interesting. The simple process of self-realization for every living entity is described here. I just forgot, I can't see. You ever forget you can't see? No, that's a pretty hard one to do. Okay. The first principle to be understood is that this world is a product of the Supreme Will. There is an identity of this world with the Supreme Lord. This identity is accepted in a misconceived way by the impersonalists. They say that the Supreme Absolute Truth, transforming himself into universes, loses his separate existence. Thus, they accept the world and everything in it to be the Lord. That is pantheism, where everything is considered to be the Lord. This is the view of the impersonalists, but those who are personal devotees of the Lord take everything to be property, went the wrong way, of the Supreme Lord. Everything, whatever we see, is a manifestation of the Supreme Lord. There's either the Lord or the Lord's energy. The Lord energy is not different from the Lord because it's coming from the Lord. Therefore, everything should be engaged in the service of the Lord. The difference between the impersonalist and the personalist is that the impersonalist does not accept the separate existence of the Lord, but the personal accepts the Lord. He understands that although he distributes himself in so many ways, he has his separate personal existence. So Prabhupada is establishing the distinction between the source of the energy and the energy of itself, and that source is a person. Whereas others, which are being indicated here, see everything as being the Lord, but the Lord not an individual personality, or he has merged himself within the impersonal energy, and therefore he is all-pervading. Which is correct, but it's not complete. He has a separate existence. This is described in the Bhagavad Gita. I am spread all over the universe in my impersonal form. Everything is resting on me, but I am not present. There is a nice example regarding the sun and the sunshine. The sun, by its sunshine, is spread all over the universe, and all the planets rest on the sunshine. But all the planets are different from the sun planet. One cannot say that because the planets are resting on the sunshine, these planets are also the sun. Logical, right? Everything is coming from God, therefore everything is God. That's what they say. But here the example is given in a very practical way which we can understand, that there is a difference between that which rests on the sun and that which is the sun. Similarly, the impersonalist or pantheistic view that everything is God is not a very intelligent proposal. The real position, as explained by the Lord himself, is that though nothing can exist without him, it is not a fact that everything is him. He is different from everything. So here also the Lord says, you will see everything in the world to be non-different from me. This means that everything should be considered a product of the Lord's energy. This is very important. Therefore, we can be happy when we understand this. Nothing belongs to me. We struggle to get things. We struggle to somehow or other keep things once we get them. But everything belongs to the Lord and is also controlled by the Lord. So the Lord always gives the devotee whatever they need, and the devotee is simply satisfied to use whatever the Lord provides in the service of the Lord. And therefore the devotee is never in anxiety, because the Lord always provides for his devotee. So Prabhupada goes on, you will see everything in the world to be non-different from me, different and non-different. So this is our philosophy. Everything is one with and different from the Lord. But then the word is simultaneously. So how can something be one and different simultaneously? So, what's the answer? Achintya. It's inconceivable. So, therefore, Jiva Goswami explains that one has to accept the inconceivable nature of the Lord before one can understand the nature of the Lord. That there are certain things that are not conceivable by our intelligence. And they are revealed to the devotee through the power of that devotee's devotion. Okay, so this means that everything should be considered a product of the Lord's energy. Okay, so here's the distinction. And therefore everything should be employed in the service of the Lord. Prabhupada says everything, not just something. One's energy should be utilized for one's self-interest. That is the perfection of energy. So what is one's self-mission? To become Krishna conscious. Or to become happy. And happiness means to become Krishna conscious. This energy can be utilized for self-interest if one is compassionate. So here we go. Now Prabhupada gets into the verse itself. A person in Krishna consciousness, the devotee of the Lord, is always compassionate. He is not satisfied that only himself is a devotee, but he tries to distribute the knowledge of devotional service to everyone. There are many devotees of the Lord who face many risks in distributing the devotional service of the Lord to people in general. That should be done. So we have the example of Lord Nityananda, when he tried to give the mercy of Lord Chaitanya in the form of the holy name to Jagai and Madai. And simply he was assaulted and criticized by them, of course. But still, it didn't deter his compassionate nature. Srila Haridas Thakur was preaching Krishna consciousness and distributing the holy name everywhere. He was arrested and beaten in 22 marketplaces. And the prime example which Prabhupada uses is that Lord Jesus Christ. He was preaching to worship God and to worship God for the in other words, he was preaching the mood of surrender to God and worship of God. And this was not liked by the state because they were using religion simply to increase their pecuniary gains, their monetary gains. It was all about business. We see that even today. As you go some of the temples, you have to give some donation. If you want to see the deity, the hundi is the biggest deity there. Make sure you see that. So in other words, they sell religion or they use religion or religious activities in order to maintain themselves. That is, at best it's piety, but at worst it's a form of cheating. So, but real devotion, real religion means to worship Krishna for the pleasure of Krishna and to distribute that knowledge to everyone. So here, Prabhupada says, a devotee is not satisfied that only himself is a devotee, but he tries to distribute the knowledge of devotional service to everyone. He said that should be done. It is also said a person who goes to the temple of the Lord and worships with great devotion, but who does not show sympathy to people in general or show respects to others' devotee is considered to be a third-class devotee. So we have first class, second class, third class. Third is the lowest. What is the lowest? Only concerned about their own spiritual gain and not so much about the needs of others. Okay? The second-class devotee is he who is merciful and compassionate to the fallen souls. The second-class devotee is always aware of his position as an eternal servant of the Lord. He therefore makes friendships with devotees of the Lord, acts compassionately towards the general people, in teaching them devotional service, and refuses to cooperate or associate with non-devotees. As long as one is not compassionate to people in general in the devotional service of the Lord, he is a third-class devotee. So Prabhupada is speaking straight that the second-class devotee, there's 4 characteristics. So what were the 4 we just mentioned? Who can name at least one of them? 4 we just mentioned. Yes?
The second one?
Yeah.
He makes friends with his people, he's compassionate.
Okay, someone else. He's compassionate for those in need or those in a lesser position. He makes friends with equals. Yes. What's the other 2 qualities that are mentioned?
Not always concerned about himself, but everyone.
Yeah, that's compassion. 2 other things that are there. That's another category. That's another category.
He refuses to associate or cooperate with those
Non-devotees, yeah, that's the last one. And the first one is he worships the Supreme Personality of Godhead with love and devotion. So worships the Lord, makes friends with other devotees, is compassionate to the fallen souls, tries to show that compassion. Prabhupada says, this is interesting, in the Bhagavad Gita, in the 13th chapter, there's one verse, 12, the 20 items of knowledge, and verses 8 through 12. And one of the qualities of knowledge is nonviolence, or ahimsa. And Prabhupada gives a very powerful, he says nonviolence means to act in such a way as to relieve the suffering of others. One who does not do that is contributing to violence. So then he's saying that people who are suffering, to relieve their suffering is actually ahimsa, or one of the definitions of ahimsa. Yeah, so Prabhupada gets right to the point. Okay, so we got the four qualities. Okay. It is indicated here that Candramauli was directed by the Lord to be very compassionate and liberal in his householder life and to give assurance to the people in his renounced life. Prabhupada goes on. A sannyasi, one in the renounced order of life, is meant to give enlightenment to the people. He should travel going from home to enlighten. The householder, being by the spell of Maya, becomes absorbed in family affairs and forgets his relationship with Krishna. If he dies in forgetfulness like the cats and dogs, then his life is spoiled. It is the duty of a sannyasi, therefore, to go and awaken the forgetful souls with enlightenment of their eternal relationship with the Lord and engage them in devotional service. So that's the duty of the sannyasis, to travel and preach. The devotees should show mercy to the fallen souls and also give them the assurance of fearlessness. This was mentioned by Kapila Dev. As soon as one becomes a devotee of the Lord, he is convinced he is protected by the Lord. Not just protected, but he's convinced Krishna will protect me. Rakhe Krishna More Ke, More Krishna Rakhe Ke. And if Krishna wants to protect you, nothing can harm you. And if Krishna lets his protection down, nothing can save you. So the devotee knows by taking shelter of Krishna, Krishna protects his devotee. Srila Sanatana Goswami, in one verse from the Srila for Hari Bhakti Vilas, explains that there are 6 characteristics of surrender to the Lord. I'll mention all 6. One we're speaking about now. And the 6th is to try to understand and know, not just try to understand, what is favorable for Krishna consciousness. That's called anukulanya. What should I do that is favorable? And pratikul, second one, what is unfavorable? To avoid those things which are unfavorable. First 2. The 3rd, 4th, and 5th is Krishna's my maintainer, protector, provider. Not just is, but he's my only maintainer, only protector, only provider. If Krishna wants to give you something, some devotee may give it to you, but it's coming from Krishna. Because that devotee says, give that to that person, or do something for that person. Krishna weren't being inspired by Krishna within the heart to act according to the will of Krishna for that particular situation. We might think I'm making a choice or I'm not making a choice. But our choice is always somehow being influenced by the Supreme Lord according to the situation. So therefore, knowing that Krishna is the only protector, one is fearless. And that's one of the qualities of a devotee. They have no fear, but they do have a fear. What is that fear? Maya. Yeah, you said it. That they think if I'm not careful, then Maya will grab me. If I'm not conscious in the execute of my devotional life, I can fall prey to the allurements or even to the energy of Maya in one form or another. So that is the only that's called healthy fear. Prabhupada calls that healthy fear. That fear that allows you to stay free from the influence of material energy. But then again, beyond that, devotee has no fear. Yes, okay.
Could we call healthy fear clairvoyance?
Clairvoyance. Well, it's based on knowledge. And that knowledge is that what we get from the spiritual master, and knowledge what we get from the scriptures, and that knowledge which we obtain from our own experiences also. So that knowledge is really when we say the source of that understanding of what to avoid. Clairvoyance may somehow or other may trick you. You may not be able to see the situation right. Some people have clairvoyance and some people don't, but a devotee can know past, present, and future simply by taking shelter of the Lord. Some people might call that clairvoyance, but it is actually the arrangement of the Lord for that devotee. Okay, and here we go. To award fearlessness to the common person is the greatest act of charity. Why? This world works in a way that causes people to be fearful. Fear of not getting, fear of losing, and what is the ultimate fear? Death. So, therefore, to award fearlessness, complete fearlessness to a person is the greatest act of charity, because when a person is free from fear, then they can execute their life in such a way that they make progress. People are always in anxiety, people are always in fear. Fear is a very strong element. And Prabhupada gives an example what actually is fear in a kind of a definition. He says fear means two, the number two. Now, to explain that, to understand that is there something outside of Krishna's control? If you say yes, then Krishna's not God. And he's relegated to something less. He's not all-powerful. But because he's the supreme, he's all-powerful. Therefore, he is the supreme controller. There's nothing outside. So when one understands that, then one can be free from fear. Because nothing happens without either two things, the will of the Lord or the permission of the Lord. The Lord will want something to happen, or the 20% of what they hear, 30% of what they see, 50% of what they see and hear together, when you combine sight and audio together, goes up to 50%. That's why we do a lot of visuals, PowerPoint presentations, because it helps to gain retention. 70% of what they do, people remember that, and 90% of what they teach. So those who give that knowledge, it goes up to 90%. Generally, this is just a statistic. But the understanding is there that if you want to retain things, give it. It's like if you want to, the water in the pot is gradually seeping out because the unused knowledge is considered to be like a leaky pot. A leaky pot. So, therefore, when we talk about preaching or showing compassion, it's actually for us. We gain so much when we preach, or because we actually start to understand deeper beyond the practice of Krishna consciousness. So one can preach to their friends, family members, relatives, nobody's around. Bhaktisiddhanta used to say, preach to the walls. Even if nobody comes, just preach to the walls. There's a story where back in 1968, I think it was, in New York City, when Prabhupada was just beginning his Hare Krishna movement, the devotees wanted to do something for Prabhupada, and so they decided to hold a public program. And so they put flyers in different places and put out some publicity in different medias, announcing that this Swami from India will be giving a lecture on the science of God, self-realization. So they rented an auditorium, with hundreds of seats in the auditorium. Devotees were thinking they had given it enough time, a lot of publicity. They were sure it was going to be big. 7 people showed up. But Srila Prabhupada was not daunted by the lack of attendance, apparent lack of attendance, and he preached to those 7 people like there were 700 people there. And at the end, the devotees came up in a very apologetic way and said to Prabhupada, we're sorry, hardly anybody showed up. Prabhupada said, did you see Narada Muni came? He was here. So he's a transcendental spaceman who travels all around and enlightens people in spiritual topics. So Prabhupada, those 7 persons, Prabhupada acted like they were the whole world. There's one story in India. One of my dear godbrothers was arranging a program with one professor in one college. And the college had been out, was out of session, so this was an interim period, and so they had arranged for people to come and hear this lecture by this Swami. And the professor, I don't remember what the topic was, but the professor was also helping, and one person showed up. One. Just one. So the professor said to the student, let's go to my office, and that's why the sannyasi came. And he spoke to the professor and the one student. And that student was so amazed that he actually surrendered and became a devotee. And now he's a full-time devotee, he's a manager, and he does amazing services. One person. So you can say, how do we gauge success? We gauge success by our endeavor. We gauge success. Prabhupada said, even if you're unsuccessful in your preaching and your attempt to help others, still you get recognized by Krishna. It's such a, dear thing to the Lord when someone makes an effort to somehow, and we'll talk about that in a practical way. The first session is more like just the philosophy. We'll speak about some of the practical things that one can actually engage in terms of doing preaching in more of an outreach way. But the principle is that if one simply thinks, what can I do to give Krishna consciousness to others, and meditates on that, starts to really think, then Krishna will help you get connected in one way or the other. But we can always talk about Krishna. I remember when I was in New Vrindavan, and in the old days of Krishna consciousness, one of the problems we had is that devotees worked very hard, and when it came to Bhagavatam class, practically the whole class was asleep. So it wasn't a very inspiring thing for the speaker. Sometimes even the speaker would fall asleep. I saw that a couple of times. I won't try to imitate what I saw because it might not go over too good, but it was quite humorous. So yeah, and then so devotees were thinking, what can we do to somehow rectify this sleepiness? So So we tried different things. I won't talk about what they were because they're not really. That should be mentioned to civilized people. Anyway, but one of the things we decided to do was make a program where each and every devotee had to ask another devotee sometime during the day, what did they say in class? So everyone was told, you must at least approach one person and say, what was the class about? So that caused people to stay awake. To both ask the question and answer the question. So that worked for a while, that worked nicely. So and that stimulated Krishna Katha, which was also nice. It's nice, and it's a nice little practice too, we can do that anytime. What did they say in class? Or one other thing we used to say is, what did the deities were wearing today? What were the colors? Yeah? Like that, and then you would start to remember, and then your mind would be focused on the form of the Lord. So these are little, little tricks that we can use to somehow or other bring Krishna consciousness in. Okay. Okay, I think I covered the verse anyway. So there's so many principles that govern, but I think in terms of our own self-interest, and without talking about the broader self-interest, is that to stay on the third-class platform and just be concerned with our own spiritual life, we really don't taste the sweetness of Krishna consciousness. Krishna consciousness is sweet when we somehow or other try to give it to others in one form or another. And we can talk about those different ways that we can do various types of outreach. And Prabhupada said there are two kinds of devotees, those who are concerned with their own spiritual life and those who are concerned with others. He said we want everyone to be in the second class, in the second path, second platform. And be more concerned about the needs of others. Okay. Any questions or comments from Preeti? Yes? Mm-hmm.
I'm just thinking that in the Bhagavad Gita, it describes the different responsibilities of the different varnas and ashrams, and says for the grihastha, it focuses on charity.
Right.
And then you read in that, or you said in your presentation that the highest form of charity is giving Krishna consciousness to others.
No, Prabhupada qualifies that fearlessness.
Right. So
Yeah.
we're giving fearlessness, but you have to give.
Right.
So that connection between the grihasthas having the obligation to offer spiritual life to others, and fearlessness will come from that offering. But the connection is quite clear that, sometimes we think charity means putting $10 in the honey, but that's not really charity. The highest form of charity is to help somebody in their spiritual life.
Yeah, in one form or another. Everyone has something to offer. Someone might think, well, I don't know so much about the scriptures. That doesn't mean anything. You can always do something. You can distribute prasadam. Just being kind to another person reflects the devotee's character, and that character is attractive to those who are receiving that kindness. So there's different ways to inspire persons to become closer in spiritual life. Yeah, the idea is bring persons from whatever step they're on to the next step. We want to move forward individually and also collectively, yes. Yeah, you had a question also?
I was wondering if you could talk about the similarities and or differences between showing compassion for a non-devotee and associating with a non-devotee.
Yeah. Association is something that needs to be defined clearly. And There is a very simple definition of association. It's called affection for. Affection for. So, a king is sitting on a throne, and there's a bug sitting on the king. Now, is that bug associating with the king? No, there's no connection. Although the proximity of physical is there, even maybe amongst persons. You can be in a room full of persons and be completely cut off from everybody. So when we develop a relation with or affection for an individual, that opens up the principle of association. So showing compassion means to give your association to others. To associate in another way means to take their association. So taking their association means taking their value system to be, your activities or your attraction. But you can be with a person and not accept what they are trying to give, but you can give them something. In other words, if they're trying to give you something material or something that's not beneficial, you don't have to associate with that. So the idea is develop relationships with like-minded devotees and share Krishna consciousness with them. That is real association. Like that. And then if you want to give your association to others, you can do that. But if you accept another person's association, then they're giving you what, and then you're accepting, and then that's different. Is that clear?
That's yes.
Yeah. They want to go to a party, you say, our party is kirtan. So, like that. Yeah, any other questions or comments? Yeah.
Spoke about the third and second class devotees, but what about the first? What are some of the qualities of the first class devotees?
Well, first class devotee doesn't preach.
Does it?
No, because they see everyone as being more advanced than they are. Are you familiar with the pranam mantras? We have Jayam Vishnupad, you're familiar with that? So when we say the pranam mantras of the great souls, we say Jayam Vishnupad Paramahansa Parivajakacharya. What are we saying? The Paramahansa is the highest stage. That's first class. Parivajakacharya is the second class trade. Coming down. So the great souls who come to this world take the second class platform to make distinctions between what is Krishna consciousness and what is not. Those on the highest platform don't make that distinction. They see everyone better than them, they see themselves as the lowest. But you can't imitate that. That's a very high stage of spiritual consciousness. Where everyone else is more advanced than you, then there's nobody to preach to. So, but that's a state of consciousness. It's not a theoretical practice you can just, assume. You have to be on that stage. And that comes through the power of one's devotional service. Usually after many lifetimes. So when Prabhupada left the planet at the very end, when he was, leaving, he called all his godbrothers and said to them, I spoke so many strong words, fools, rascals, dogs, hogs, camels, asses, and kick them in the face with boot. So many things. He said, I want to apologize. And they all said, no, Swamiji, there's nothing to apologize. Prabhupada attained the mood of a first-class devotee before he left. And then he was seeing that what he had to do as a service was something he did, but his consciousness is on a higher platform. And that was an example from our spiritual master. But you can't imitate that. Yes?
So could you maybe give us some other examples from the scriptures? Because I know I've just been reading about Uddhava, how he's the topmost pure devotee of the Lord, but yet he still preaches the pastimes of Krishna.
Well, Srila Haridas Thakur, when he was beaten in 22 marketplaces, he was praying for his torturers to somehow or other become Krishna conscious. He was praying for their benefit. Rather, if you're being beaten by someone, you don't usually pray for their benefit. But he was. And he prayed so strongly while they were torturing him that when Lord Chaitanya saw what was happening to Haridas, he was going to come and kill them. He said, I was going to come from Vaikuntha with my chakra and destroy them, but your prayers were so strong, my chakra would not move off my hand. He said that. And then at the Mahaprakash Leela, when Lord Chaitanya was there giving his darshan as the Supreme Lord, he showed Haridas Thakur his back. And on his back were the whip marks that were given to Haridas. The Lord accepted them rather than letting his devotee feel the pain. He said this was the compassion of Srila Haridas Thakur. So he never had any ill feelings towards his torturers. Not only that, he only wished them the best. And at the end, after they couldn't kill him, they said to Haridas, you know, Haridas, we're supposed to kill you, and because we didn't, now we're going to be punished. So what Haridas Thakur said, oh, okay, so just watch what I do. So he went into samadhi and all his external bodily functions stopped. And then they took him in front of the Kasi, and he was like dead. But he had kept his internal consciousness going, stopped his external senses. They threw him in the river, thinking he was dead. He floated, came up on the beach on the other side, walked away, and started preaching again. This was Haridas Thakur. So there's an example of great souls, and they're completely under the influence of the Lord's mercy. So these are, you know, there's many. So Prahlad Maharaj is another one. There's so many examples. Prahlad Maharaj, Dhruva Maharaj. Yeah. Yes, Paramahansa.
We make a transition from the third class devotee that thinks all about his own welfare to the second class devotee that covers the second.
To cultivate those four qualities. Just think of those four qualities. Make friends with devotees. Preach to the innocent. Continue to and increase your devotion to Krishna. And be very conscious not to associate with those who are against Krishna consciousness. So by cultivating those four qualities and simultaneously practicing your devotional service, not just doing those cultivations, but both, you attain the next platform. It's all about cultivating what you want to become. When you emphasize, if you want to preach, opposite, just emphasize it, and you will start to develop what we say, the ability to preach more and more. If you want to be a good cook, hang out with good cooks. Learn from them, watch them, try to see what they're doing and how to do it yourself. Whatever you want to do, emphasize. And it takes time, it takes focus, but you become, we're doing that now in our own categories, but if we want to move in another category, this is what you need to do, focus. So focus on those four things. Does that help? Yeah.
I also maybe would like to express a reflection on what you said about sannyasis, traveling to remind others. And I can, through my experiences with Grihastha, I can really reflect how I don't think I appreciated this much before as I appreciate now, how important is the role of sannyasi and preacher. In the matter of time, somebody who's completely dedicated their life to preaching. For Grihastha, to actually be able to properly take shelter in his ashram. Because it is really important lives on.
Somebody what?
It is very important to see for like me that there's somebody who lives on
Lives
which
on.
Krishna's glory, so to remind others about Krishna. And
We're all
all
doing
our business.
We're all doing it to some degree, just increase, that's all. There's a taste there. Otherwise, how could you do it? But there was no taste. There wasn't a sweet taste. But there's something there that motivates you. It's not just dry austerity that, all right, I gotta preach. All right, Krishna wants it. No, there's a taste. So we had to go for that taste.
Thank you for sharing that taste.
Huh?
Thank you for sharing that.
I'm still trying to get it. Otherwise, why would anyone want to travel around? It's really kind of tough, especially when you get old. Prabhupada did it. Started at 70. Started at 70. I'm trying to end at 70. Not quite, but there's a taste there. But you don't have to travel to preach. That can be done anywhere. When you see what Krishna is giving you, you can realize he's giving me so much. And I have to use it. Yes?
For an example, did Chaitanya Mahaprabhu did he just stay in the second class category, devotee of preaching on stuff, or did he also?
He's God.
Of course.
So because he's God, he can do any class. He's classless. But as a devotee of God, he was acting on the highest platform. But the next class, I believe it's the next class, we'll see some examples of Lord Chaitanya's preaching. Although he didn't do much preaching, he still, when it was required, he did. He mostly preached through Harinam Sankirtan, like that. And he mostly preached simply by his appearance. When people saw him, they became Krishna conscious, simply by his presence. So that was, if you can do that, then that's no problem. But they say, a powerful devotee, when that powerful devotee is there, simply by his presence, people change. They develop spiritual qualities, or even enthusiasm for Krishna conscious service increases with the presence of great souls. So, even if they don't speak. So Haridas, Lord Chaitanya, he mostly preached, he said he preached in 3 ways. He inspired others, he entered into the hearts of others, and when that person was in others' presence, they would also feel Lord Chaitanya's presence. That's called Avesh. And then the third one was that wherever he was, when they saw him, they became a devotee. But that's God. Anything else? Yes.
Just a comment.
Sure.
With another devotee, Shakti, and she was saying something really similar to the 3 classes that just really resonated when you said it. It was just the idea that at first one will often think that nobody's enlightened and that myself is trying to become enlightened. And then there's another stage where you realize that nobody, sorry, I'm not saying this properly, but the idea that the first stage is nobody's enlightened, including myself. The second stage is
nobody's enlightened except for me.
And then the second stage is nobody's enlightened except for me, so I must preach to all the unenlightened ones. And the third stage is actually realizing that everyone is enlightened and that you're below them and you serve them. And it really resonated when you said that to me, because when the Shakti was saying it to me, I didn't understand what she was saying. And now I kind of clicked.
Yeah, but the second is Now she's taken it to the extreme. There's a very few enlightened, not nobody except for me. That's not. Usually that can cause you to be a little arrogant and proud. You think nobody else is enlightened except for you. It's like the kid who grows up and thinks, gee, as I get older, my father gets more intelligent. Get the point? He didn't realize his father's intelligence, and as he grows, he realizes it. And then he realizes it. So, yeah, but the general statement you made is correct. Yeah. Yes, Master.
First, what you're saying, the second class devotee, he doesn't think he's enlightened, but he knows he has some ability to help others make advancements, so he goes out of his way to assist others.
Right.
It's a compassionate mood.
That's a more complete understanding, yeah. The mood of compassion. I've been given something. I'm Bhagyavan. Bhagyavan means I'm fortunate because I have been an object of someone's mercy. Therefore I have received knowledge, I have received the mercy. Therefore, let me give it. Yeah. So, becoming fortunate and thinking, now I have to make others fortunate.
He felt so compassionate to Rahugana that, you know, you're a king and you're acting like a jerk. And I was already there, and now let me help you to get past this, you know, to become compassionate and a ruler like you're supposed to be. And he's stopped his
arrogance.
His own, you know, he preached to him so strongly because he felt it was really his duty to do it.
Yeah. But King Rahugana he could appreciate, he was on his way to Kapila Ashram when he was traveling. He was going to a holy place. So he had some piety there, some religious sentiment. So when he met a holy man, he was able to be able to receive. Quite arrogant. Yeah, maybe because of his position. That's another thing. Some people say, of course I've only heard this from a few people, that King Rahugana was that deer that he showed compassion in a previous life, and he died and came back as a king. Because, you know, that deer got compassion of a great devotee. So it's just like a ISKCON circulation around. So I try to find some shastric references, and I didn't get anything. But some of the people were credible enough to believe so. So you have to go by personality. It's interesting. Well, there's always a connection, because the Bhagavatam highlights the essence, and the Puranas give the details of a lot of the stories in the Bhagavatam that are not mentioned. Because if the Bhagavatam wanted to do that, you know, it would be, you know, you couldn't carry it. Stacks and stacks. So the Puranas highlight, just like, give you an example, King Vena, when he was a king, and then of course he was acting against the Brahmanas, and he was exploiting people. He was a dacoit in the name of a king. The Brahmins used mantras. Prabhupada said Brahmins are so powerful that they can actually kill a person by mantra. So they did, and then of course later on, you know, they took his body, and then from there King Prithu came. But what happened to Veda is that after he died, in his next life, he went to Kurukshetra, and did some penances and austerities, and actually went to Brahma Kund, which is a very holy place in Kurukshetra, during the time of the eclipse, solar eclipse, which is the most... Yeah, that's a very auspicious time. The people bathe in that Kund, hundreds of thousands of people. He was there and he did penances, and he got elevated. Says he went back to the spiritual world, King Veda. That's in the Karma Purana. So, you know, you've had everything that's in the Bhagavatam is the essential principles and the philosophy that surrounds those activities. But the details of the before and after programs are found in the Puranas. So, a lot of them anyway. Okay, so should we stop here, take a break, or is there any more questions? Comments? Teaching, outreach? Okay, so it's about 10 to 5, yes?
Maharaj, about the preach to the walls thing. I mean, how long are we supposed to continue that? Or use your intelligence to realize that this is not the place that I should be spending my effort and energy on?
Well, you mean you're saying that the people you preach to are similar to the walls?
No, I mean, when do you know? Hey,
When you know when to quit?
yeah.
Don't ever quit.
No, I mean,
Yeah. Well, the thing is, if people, they say, and this is a statement, they say, you want to give the message for people who are eager to hear the message, or people who are a little receptive. If people have a wall up or don't want to change, then you think, there's so many other people who I could be helping, and I might be just wasting my time here. Now you have to determine after a certain effort. After you make a certain effort, you have to see. Just like, you know, we go from place to place and then we see. Sometimes we go from one place and, you know, they say, hi Maharaj, and then about 2 days later, bye Maharaj. Don't stay too long. You took prasadam 3 days, that's enough. Don't disrupt our status quo here. So, you know, you don't really feel inspired to go back to those places because it becomes more like ceremony rather than when people are eager to hear with a desire to make their life better, then, or to gain something that will help them in their practice or in their preaching. Like that. They say don't pour ghee on ashes. So yeah, you have to give it a chance though. Just see. I mean, Prabhupada went to many places and people, you know, didn't want it. But he went to different places. So we have to try. Okay. Anything else? So Shruti Kirti Prabhu is supposed to speak at 5:45, it's 4:52 now, so that's, my class was supposed to end at 5:15, right? There's a break? Okay. Take a break. Thank you. Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai.